This is the Sandman on TV podcast industries, and we're discussing the Sandman Chapter 3, Dream a Little Dream of Me.
What do you want with me, then?
Something of mine came into your possession. A leather pouch filled with sand. I need it back.
Well, that was yours. Bought an estate sale a while back. Didn't even manage to get the drawstrings open.
Where is it?
No idea. Could be anywhere.
We must find it.
Must we? Why is that?
Because without it, my realm will cease to exist, and if dreams disappear, then so will humanity.
No offense, but I could do without dreams for a while. Haven't had a decent night's sleep in ages.
Nor will you. Until we find the sand.
Welcome back, fellow dreamers and nightmares. This is TV Podcast Industries, and we're discussing The Sandman, Chapter 3, Dream a Little Dream of Me. I am the one conducting the hosting of this dreamscape. I am Chris today.
What are you other days, Chris?
Chris, Christopher, Janice, Janet, George.
Well, I'm one of your other hosts, Derek. Always Derek.
Excellent. And fellow dreamers, I am the third and final host, John. Yes, we hope this podcast will help you daydream about all things Sandman.
Yes, speaking of, before we get into anythings, the Sandman Dreamcast has now also launched on Sandman.com and other places, where it is essentially a sleepcast narrated by the cast of The Sandman. Yes, you can fall asleep to the dulcet tones of Neil Gaiman, Tom Sturges, and all the rest of the cast.
Wow, that's really interesting.
While they take you through the dreamscape. It is very cool if you have a chance to listen.
Excellent.
Yeah, I must check that out, because it's weird. Neil Gaiman has one of those voices that I instantly recognise, and I've always found way too interesting to not listen to, so just continue to listen to everything he said. If he's created a Dreamcast, I don't know whether I'll fall asleep to it. I'll just listen to that.
It's a lot of ASMR.
You
I'm
will.
not going to lie. It's like, tonight we're going to go on a dreamscape walk. And you're like, that's really annoying. I just want to listen. But we're not here to talk about the dreamscape and their sleepcast. We're here to talk about The Sandman and the first 3 episodes. What? Yes, the first 3, because we're going to, before we even get into our spoiler-filled discussion of episode 3, we're going to jump in to some feedback on episodes 1 and 2, because we recorded them ahead of schedule, before the release, and we didn't have a chance to listen to you and hear your feedback from the fellow dreamers and nightmares. So we want to jump in, discuss some of the finer points that you thought about on episodes 1 and 2, and then we'll jump into the spoiler-filled discussions on episode 3. So, gentlemen, shall we jump in straight away?
Yes, let's kick off with a piece of email feedback in from Coffee and Vodka, who says, "Greetings, fellow trapped defenders. I first must admit I have a huge figurative and literal investment in the Sandman, and when I saw David S. Gore's involvement in bringing it to life, my heart sank more than a little. The writer behind Blade Trinity and Batman v Superman. In addition to writing this, he's also been given a producer credit. Just how much pull would Neil have in keeping his dream pure? Some changes in story structure are necessary for transit to a televised medium. Much of what I think of this series, however, will come from how far away from just based on or inspired by they can keep it. This is one show I cannot go lightly on. The introduction to the dreaming and dream, the sheriff going after the nightmare outlaw from the start, is absolutely puerile spoon feeding, showing a clear disrespect for both audience and source material. Goyer 1, Gaiman 0. The rest, while understandably truncated, was serviceably scripted. Excellently filmed, decently acted, with wonderful set and sound design. Tom Sturge is perfect in the role of Dream, in look and demeanour. Boyd Holbrook is so far passable as the Corinthian, and Vivian Ashrampong great as caring yet proper Lucienne. Dream's escape was beyond gorgeously presented. Ending the episode as it began, underlining an eventual showdown was basic, removing much of the grander atmosphere of the rest of the episode, possibly diminishing the series. All beats added in this first installment ends in a score of Goya 3, Gaiman 2, which means Coffee and Vodka has scored this 2.5 bloody bird droppings out of 5. Peace and take care, Coffee and Vodka. Thanks for your thoughts, Coffee and Vodka. I do know, because I've seen some more feedback from Coffee and Vodka, that he does start to warm to the series more as it gets closer to the books. But I know that this can be an issue when you're adapting a show for TV. It definitely can be an issue when they move around bits of the story. Corinthian doesn't play a huge part in the early parts of the comic books. He plays a much bigger part later on throughout what's covered within the series, actually. But I can understand why they did it for the show. I can understand having to have this kind of central big bad, especially considering your Sandman is trapped underground for 100 years. So you kind of have to give a little bit of story there to it. But I will also say David S. Goyer, while he was involved in the development of this for many, many years, he handed it off to the showrunner Alan Heinberg and Neil Gaiman, and they are all executive producers, but I actually don't know how much of what David Goyer created is involved in the show. He said it handed off quite a while ago because he wasn't able to be involved in the show.
I think he said he broke it. He broke the story. And for a lot of kind of TV writers or like and that type of thing, it's where they take the source material and try and figure out how it could be structured across like 10 episodes or 8 episodes. So that's how they kind of break the story, quote unquote. I think from previous kind of interviews, I think he said he helped break the story and some of the top line highlights of each episode of how they would drop and kind of like how it would open to close. But the actual individual bits, I think you're right. He said he handed it over beyond that. And there was obviously that.
Yeah.
Like,
well, I'm glad that the final score of Goya versus Gaiman ended quite close. It was a 3-2 loss just to Neil Gaiman. I guess there must have been a foul somewhere in that. So, I mean, that's it. It's difficult to know. I haven't read the comics, so for me, this episode was really good. I think the bigger issue for me was maybe with the episode 2, which we discussed in the podcast, just being really quite short and just wondering where that fitted. But even having said that, given that they premiered the first 2 episodes, it would seem to me you watch it as a single episode ultimately.
Yeah. They're definitely striking that balance because obviously all 10 episodes are released on Netflix at the same time. But yes, at the premiere, it was just the first 2, wasn't it? So giving people that kind of insight into where the show's going, I suppose.
Yeah. But good stuff. Thanks, Coffee and Vodka. We also got some episode 1 feedback over on our Facebook group at facebook.com/groups/TV Podcast Industries. Victor Von Doom says, I could not take my eyes off this story. Everything from performances to visuals, music and audio was exciting. It was great fun to see Charles Dance in full Tywin Lannister mode. Corinthian makes a great villain. There was also feedback from Dr. Bob Phillips. He says, I was delighted to see episode 1 a day early twice and be lost in the look and sound and feel of it. Only exposure previously has been via the Audible adaptation. Highly recommended. So having the visuals was an explosion of delight. Adored the opulence and the disregard for Dream as an entity. The love story of the gardener, pure and faithful, shows how dodgy parenting can sometimes sadly win through. Hoping the scenes with dangerously thin Dream were either CGI enhanced or done over a very short time so the poor lad could eat and drink again. It wasn't the fascination of John Harrison, but a need to get him in a ward and feed him up. Thank you so much, Victor Von Doom. Thanks, Bob Phillips, for that. I think you're right. I think, both your feedback really just the visuals, the feeling, the music, the soundscape of it was just so well done. And I'm hoping as well that Tom Sturridge managed to get a good pie and chips in him at the end of the day, just to make up a bit more ballast, I guess.
Yeah, I'd hope that he's going to be able to wear that cloak a lot more in future, so that he can put on a little bit more weight than that, definitely. And remember, this is going to be, if they continue the series, it could be over 5 to 10 years that they'll be filming the show. You'd have to keep at that weight for 10 years.
Yeah, we'll have to have a body to fat ratio watch, I guess.
Well, I'm sure, as a good Londoner, I'm sure he definitely got the pie and chips.
I'm sure he did.
I'm sure he did. It's like the first thing he went to. Thanks, Dr. Bob, and thank you, Victor Von Doom.
Absolutely, thank you.
We got 2 words from Doug Green, who had this to say. Literal perfection. Direct to the point,
Exactly.
Doug. Thank you very much. Joe Herbers had, I knew little about the story and my wife knew nothing going in, but really liked the first episode. Yeah, I think this is the thing. A lot of people kind of came in on the first and, again, depending on your kind of level with it or what you enjoyed, it was definitely interesting. The last piece of feedback for Facebook came from Lara Willie Swink, who said, I just finished episode 1 and it's everything my teenage goth girl heart desired and more. Tom Sturges is the embodiment of the comic book character, both visually and how I expected him to sound. Still, mad props to McAvoy's interpretation in the Audible audio version. I love how they've given more story to the Corinthian, using his escape from the dreaming to explain how an amateur like Roderick was able to capture and keep the Lord of Dreams. They made Alex a more sympathetic character, and we are given a sad fate for Matthew's predecessor. So pleased the original fans of the comics were given what they've been dreaming, I see what you did there, of for 30 years, but also a few new gems. Thank you so much, Lara. Yeah, I think for me personally, focusing in on Tom, he really is this. And as the episodes progress, you really do see how he starts to embody this character. Again, for me personally, I know we've had feedback where some people aren't too happy with how the Corinthians come in so early. Again, for me, it's a way of introducing a villain early on and well done. So this addition, more story, makes sense because the way we introduced the Corinthian in the comic books and how he is shown later wouldn't have fit in. So this, as just giving him, hey, this is how he escaped, this is what happened, you know, let's talk more, makes sense of, and the way he meddles.
Yeah, he's definitely more involved in the story, certainly, than he was in the comic, especially this first episode. I was just thinking about it there when you were reading Lara's feedback as well. It's kind of important to give an audience who's going to sit down for a 10-episode show and don't know anything about it some kind of thing to latch on to at the beginning of the episode so they kind of know what they're following. And if you think about the episode, if you'd removed those Corinthian scenes from the episode, we wouldn't actually know what this series was about until the end of it when Morpheus says, I need to get my tools back, effectively. We wouldn't really know if you didn't have that linchpin of some antagonist in the show to hang on to from the beginning of the episode. By the end of the episode, you know, but at least there's something there where you go, oh, okay, well, I have an idea that he's the Lord of Dreams and Nightmares, and this gives us something to kind of follow along with.
But I think as well, it's an anchor for the series, not just for the episode, because, you know, he pops up in episodes after this. Again, I'm expecting that that's earlier than when he was revealed and his story started in the comics. So it's adding it for the series that, you know, not only these episodic events that are going on that are being rectified at the time, but there is this larger event going on. So it just adds layers to what's happening.
Exactly.
You know, so, thanks so much, Lara.
Thanks, Lara.
Yeah.
Yes.
We also got in for episode 2 from Coffee and Vodka. Greetings, fellow dusted defenders. Well, the silly invented showdown plotline continues to skew the source material and demean the main thrust of the saga, which is Dream's journey. But, much like ketchup on a steak, we can still enjoy the game and through the Goya, with the best casting and portrayal of Cain and Abel one could imagine. The Fates likewise mirrored their graphic novel counterparts extraordinarily well, and it's hard to imagine a better John Dee, less deranged yet still menacing. Finally, the other shining stars of this series, the atmospheric music, special effects, and direction almost make one forget the Corinthians' unnecessary expanded presence. 3.5 gifted gargoyles out of 5. Peace and take care. Coffee and Vodka. Thanks so much, Coffee and Vodka. Glad to see that the out of 5s are beginning to rise. Mm-hmm. They're beginning to rise for sure. I would like to have known the footy score on this one as well, I think. I'm guessing it's a win for Gaiman on this one.
Maybe 2-1 to Gaiman, maybe?
Yeah, maybe. Yeah. And I think you're right. I think in terms of John Dee character, played by David Thewlis, he's just really, really good. And I just think he gets better as well over the season. He's a really... It's that mild derangement, and terror, just in terms of what and how he views the world.
Yes.
And what it should be. So it's really, really good. It's certainly very creepy.
Yes.
So,
We'll definitely be talking about him more as the series goes on. Good stuff. Thanks, Coffee and Vodka. Also over on Facebook, we got some feedback on episode 2 from Dr. Bob Phillips, who says the librarian is so beautiful, as is the landscape, to be fair. Hadn't quite realized the sadness in the eyes of Morpheus as Gregory gives himself up for the dreaming, and having listened to the first episode of the podcast, the significance of them whirling galaxies in the iris of dream as he dives into the sleepscape was noted.
Thanks, Dr. Bob. That's what we do. Mm-hmm. That's why we are here. We can give you the significance.
Sometimes we get the right notes. Ben Rush says, my wife was in tears at Gregory passing, even though she knew about Goldie. Loved in the dream see the reverse. Dream was the comic book accurate one. Yes, I think we mentioned that, didn't we? That he has got the eyes of the galaxies in his eyes when he's looking at himself in the dream sea. Very cool, Ben.
Yeah. Thanks, Ben.
Thank you, Ben.
Thanks, Dr. Bob.
Thanks, Bob.
Victor Von Doom had this to say. Greetings, dreamers. I am new to this story and totally hooked on it. So, questions. Do the Sandman's tool have some correlation to the waking world? Cain and Abel plus Gregory, comical and very tragic. I must say, I've never seen a friendlier gargoyle. The Hecate are reminiscent of the witches Perseus visited. What are the serpents doing with the gargoyle egg? How did Ethel come to possess the tool she used to banish the Corinthian? Is it something else she stole from the mages? I'm reading the comics ahead of each episode. It seems a good way to avoid binging the series. Night night, dreamers. Okay,
thanks,
I'm
Victor.
going to hand off to our Sandman expert, Derek. So first up, does the Sandman's tool have any correlation in the waking world?
No, there are his tools created for his job in the comics. Anyway, no particular correlation to anything in the waking world. It's
But it does impact the waking world, I guess, in that sense.
Of course, yes. Sorry, did it have an impact? Absolutely, but they don't have a correlation with the waking world. I suppose if you think about the old stories of the Sandman, where the idea came from, 100 years old, I think the story itself, someone blowing sand in your eyes to put you to sleep. That's where the bag of sand comes from, because he was originally another DC character who Neil Gaiman took on board for this comic, but no particular connection as far as I remember from to the other tools being part of the waking world.
Excellent. Next up, well, we can say that Cain and Abel is a tragic story, so we can agree there. We can say that they've never been a friendlier gargoyle. Have you seen Disney's Gargoyles? Just putting that out there. Comic book series, animated show, definitely friendly ones in there. Moving on. The Hecate are reminiscent of the witches Perseus visited. Well, I can actually answer this one. Yes, because they are. Yeah. They're the same witches.
Exactly. They are the Fates. They're known as Fates. They are known as the witches. Yeah. They're generally at a crossroads, and yes, the three different parts of the same whole. I think they even appeared in American Gods as well. I think they had those three characters in American Gods as well. Mm-hmm.
Finally, because the Ethel question will come later. We'll get onto that, because that's going to come up in the show. But what was the serpent doing with the gargoyle egg?
I'll leave that to you, Chris.
Didn't you know that snakes actually laid gargoyle eggs, not snake eggs? And then gargoyles lay serpent
snake
eggs.
Yeah. That makes so much sense.
Exactly. They've really kind of got a deal going on between them.
I was more going, he was going in for lunch. Like, that was probably where it was going. But we don't know, unfortunately, Victor. But if you have a better theory, please let us know in your feedback
somebody else left the egg behind, maybe?
Yes.
Or it's a magic
Yes.
serpent, one or the other.
One of the,
Or
we will
maybe the
find
serpent was trying to eat it.
Maybe.
it. Yeah,
And
there we go.
Morpheus saved the gargoyle.
Potentially. But if you fellow dreamers have a better answer, because someone probably does, come on.
Or
It's
it'll be
not
just
hard.
said in the next episode and we've missed it.
Yeah, that's true. But if you or any of your fellow dreamers have a good answer for what was the serpent doing with the gargoyle egg, you can send us your feedback at tvpodcastindustries.com, or you can head on over to our Facebook group, facebook.com/groups/TV Podcast Industries, where you can leave us your thoughts on what that serpent was doing. But gentlemen, that's all of our feedback for episode 1 and 2.
Yep, we'll have some more feedback later on in the episode after our discussion about episode 3. Lots more feedback to come. Thanks so much to everybody who's been sending their feedback to us. Yeah, it's really good. I put up spoiler posts for the first 10 episodes, so there has been at least one piece of feedback on every post, I think, for all 10 episodes. So we know some of you are watching it really quickly and some of you are watching along with us. And thanks so much for sending in your thoughts.
Yes, thank you so much. But gentlemen, let's move on over to episode 3 of The Sandman, Chapter 3, Dream a Little Dream of Me. And no, I'm not going to sing it before anyone gives out. Don't worry. You can unplug your ears. I'm not going to start humming. But this is going to be a spoiler-filled discussion. So if you haven't watched it yet, I don't know what you're doing listening here. But sure, pause, come back, and we can wait. Welcome back. Derek, do you want to tell them who gave them what for what they just watched?
Yeah, the executive producers of the show are Alan Heinberg, Neil Gaiman, and David S. Goyer. This episode was written by Jim Campolongo. Jim is also an executive producer on The Sandman, but this is his only writing credit for the series. Staff writers for the episode include Vanessa Benton and Catherine Smythe McMullen. And the episode was directed by Jamie Childs. He's directed 6 episodes of his Dark Materials, 4 episodes of Doctor Who as well. And he's also involved as director of 2 episodes of the recently announced Willow TV series.
Yeah, excellent.
Yeah, that'll be really interesting
Good
to see.
stuff.
So he does fantasy well.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, he does. John, do you want to tell us what they gave us with your synopsis for this episode?
Sure. Morpheus tracks down Joanna Constantine to London, where she is not only dubious about the existence of Sandman, but must hurry to perform an exorcism on royalty at the behest of Rick the Vic. As she begins her exorcism under the guise of marrying the Princess Royal to an average footballer, she realizes that she was right about the demon, but wrong about the host, as the demon Agalith bursts out of his host, Kevin, the footballer. She sends him back to hell to the dismay of Morpheus, who was looking for information on the demon who had purchased his helm. But it is not a wasted journey to London, as he requires the return of his pouch from Constantine. However, Constantine reveals that she left it with her ex-girlfriend, flatmate, lover. It's complicated. After leaving her without telling her. As I say, it's complicated. Both of them, along with an unwanted raven named Matthew, head to Rachel's apartment, where they discover that she has been consumed by the world of dreams from the pouch of sand that is not meant for humans. Constantine is determined to cure her girlfriend, but Rachel is wasted away, lying in her bed, and it is only the pouch that is keeping her alive, Morpheus tells Constantine. His reluctance to help end Rachel's misery infuriates Constantine, who questions the point of the Lord of Dreams. Seeing Constantine's guilt coupled to the stings of her baiting and a lesson in humanity, Morpheus agrees to give Rachel a peaceful rest. With his pouch back, Morpheus departs for hell, where Matthew, his raven, may be of some use. Meanwhile, Ethel Cripps, whose life has been prolonged by the Amulet of Protection, travels to an institution in Buffalo, New York, to warn her son John that Morpheus is after them and his ruby. John's dark obsession with Morpheus's ruby puts him at odds with his mother, who doesn't reveal the location of the ruby, but eventually passes the Amulet of Protection to John for his safety. On doing so, she ages rapidly and dies. Longing to get his hands on the ruby, John then escapes the hospital, using the amulet to kill all who threaten his well-being. As he takes his first few tentative steps of freedom in the outside world, he bumps into an unexpected nightmare.
Very good.
Ah, the unexpected nightmare. Don't you just hate when you physically bump into them?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. let's jump into our top moments for this episode. And I suppose let's begin the way all of them do, with a wedding and a funeral and an exorcism.
I guess so, yeah.
All the sacraments covered, I guess.
Yeah. Should we address Constantine? Should we address the full introduction of Constantine?
Joanna Constantine, yes. Great to have this character on screen. Been hearing a lot about her, obviously, in all the material before the show was coming out. Jenna Coleman is a great actress. We talked about her before last episode, that she's done some great stuff. Probably most well known for Doctor Who, and her character of Clara on there. But I think this is a really, really good role for her. I think she's got a really good swagger about her. She's got that swagger of Constantine about her.
Yeah.
Oh, 100%. The embodiment of how she... I suppose it's that swagger. It's like how I imagine Constantine essentially what acted in those Hellblazer comics when he was doing those meeting, like, the vicar meeting, kind of doing these exorcisms. And then, like, we got flavors of that in the Constantine US film.
Yeah.
Like the one where, like, essentially Keanu Reeves, you got flavors of kind of how that was all going down and, like, that personality.
Yeah.
But I suppose it was always slightly different for me, especially when it came to the actual, his, or in this case, her, approach to exorcisms and the loss of children and, like, how that went down. So, yeah, I absolutely can't.
Yeah, and I suppose it's pretty important to say here as well that the explanation that Neil Gaiman's giving for having Joanna Constantine in the show rather than John Constantine as it was in the comic books is that there is a character called Joanna Constantine who we will meet later on in the series, and he thought it would just be as logical to have Joanna Constantine, a descendant of the other Constantine that he met, showing up on the show. And I think that makes loads of sense because, getting another character over from DC is probably quite difficult, getting it on Netflix as well. But if you've got an actress as good as Jenna Coleman, you want to see as much of her as possible, right? So, this is a very big episode for Joanna Constantine. It's a lot of the character in there. I know lots of people calling for a spin-off of Joanna Constantine, taking over the mantle, of the Constantine legacy, I suppose, the way they describe it. But I really like it. And I think it separates it for me from the Hellblazer comic books. And I'm not expecting her to go off and do all the adventures that Hellblazer had or that Constantine had in those comic books. There's two notable actors who played the role. Matt Ryan played Constantine for a number of years in the DC-verse, and Keanu Reeves played him in the movie. They're both very notable actors, but I couldn't see them jumping in here for an episode. I could see Jenna Coleman coming in and doing a great job and, getting people to like the character, but I don't think it would have made sense. It would have been way too distracting if either of them had come back to play this role for one episode.
Yeah, I mean, I thought that Jenna Coleman was just really good here. I think there shouldn't even be any kind of debate, and we do get that kind of notion from Morpheus. I mean, it's as much as Morpheus kind of knowing this person, and that he says that he's known the Constantines for a long time. It is, the nuts and bolts of it, as you say, that Neil Gaiman has mentioned. But for me, I think Joanna Constantine, I think as you said, Chris, she gets that swagger. I mean, I thought this royal exorcism was just fantastic. At the end of it all, she says to Rick the Vic, who do I invoice? Is it Buckingham Palace or the Church of England? The two big institutional pillars, I guess, of the British establishment. And I just thought that was really, really good fun. I love almost the disdain, the brush off of Morpheus when they first meet outside where she marries the princess. You even have the weirdness of the 280-year-old Hetty.
Mad Hetty.
Mad Hetty meeting her on the steps, it sort of proclaiming that Morpheus is back. And she's kind of like, oh, you mean like the Sandman? That guy, that sends you to sleep. So, just really dismissive, really good. I know we'll come to it in other parts, but, there's the nod to Constantine's backstory as well in this episode, which is really, really good. And just the whole exorcism of, I was right about the demon, wrong about the host, as both Rick the Vic and Constantine thought it was the Princess Royal, who was the one possessed because of this secret marriage happening with Kevin the footballer, who looked like a really average footballer, as he's described by Constantine as well. Really good, and of course just the whole then exorcism being sort of brought in through, as the marriage banns are being sort of read out.
Yes. Yeah. Really good idea to do it. I love the concept that obviously they think it's the princess that's possessed, because there's no way that she would not want to do the whole royal wedding thing with thousands and thousands of people watching on and millions of pounds spent on the wedding. There's no way. She has to be possessed by a demon, right? There's no way that she'd go outside the bounds of what they're allowed to get married to. I really, really like that kind of joke that's in there with her as well.
Definitely. And even just once the demon Aglith has burst out, which was such a cool scene. It was done so well. Just seeing the hands appear out of the mouth and then just poor Kevin being ripped apart. You kind of have Rick the Vic kind of almost tottering next to the demon as tries to get the princess out of the way.
Yeah.
But it's even after that when Morpheus comes up, and there's this moment where Morpheus can get some information about where his helm is, and Constantine just sends, once she's known the name of the demon, she just sends the demon back to hell, despite Morpheus commanding her to not to, effectively. So it's really got the irreverence of Constantine, and that Scouse irreverence in effect. So I really, really, really think Jenna Coleman was fantastic in this. Yeah. In this opening moment, it was like the demon Aglith. It was the burst of what she was doing. The sarcasm, the backhanded wit, all that kind of stuff. The irreverence, not only for the demon, but for the Lord of Dreams. So I thought it was really, really cool.
Absolutely.
So that's really our introduction to Constantine. Like, I think it's one of the most fun parts for me. We do get introduced to another character. Perhaps one of my favorite actors in the world.
All right.
Yes.
Who's that, Chris?
That would be Patton Oswalt, a fellow nerd who has come over from MODOK on Disney Plus or Hulu, depending on where you were. One of the only Disney Marvel shows that got made, and all the rest of the other ones got canned. It was Hitmonkey and MODOK. But I love Patton Oswalt. He's just a great, in my opinion, he's a great actor. He knows us, and he's loved Sandman for years.
Yes.
So, him playing Matthew the Raven, the replacement Raven for that the Lord of Dreams must take with him, or must kind of have with him, based on the librarian's request, we should say.
Yes, Morpheus doesn't seem overly pleased that Lucien didn't go along with him saying, no, I don't want a raven, and Matthew seems to be just annoying enough to make Morpheus take him around with him, right? That seems to be the case with
That's
Matthew.
usually how it works.
Yeah.
Like, you need that annoying buddy. Like, it's all like, look at Indiana Jones. He had the annoying buddies. If you look at most major heroes, have an annoying sidekick.
Absolutely. And Matthew, this is Matthew from the comics as well. This is very much someone that's newly come to the Land of the Dreaming, was formerly a living human, comes to the Land of the Dreaming and is now reincarnated as a raven to help out Morpheus, or watch over Morpheus. So I really like this, I must say. I know Patton Oswalt has done lots of voice work over the last couple of years. He's I think that's how he spent all of his time during COVID, was doing all the voice work, I think.
Hey, if you go to work, you can still work from home.
Absolutely. But I think he works really well because, they're this is just the first intro to him. We'll see him more throughout the series, of course, but he'll have other storylines going on. He's not just going to be the sidekick character. He does have some other things that he will do as the series goes on. And I think this was a good introduction to why Lucian would want the Raven with Morpheus. I think, as we said in the first episode, Morpheus came back to the land of the dreaming and then just disappeared again. And the last time that happened, it was 100 years before he came back, and Lucian didn't even know what had happened to his last Raven. So Lucian's sending Matthew out just to keep an eye on it. So
report back effectively.
So hopefully, if anything does happen, she can be informed much quicker than she was last time.
Yeah. Anything quicker than 100 years is going to be quicker.
That's just a blink of an eye in the land of the dreaming, though, Chris.
That's true. It's a very long blink.
It is. Do you want to talk about our next big moment from the episode, the kind of backstory of Constantine?
Yeah, I think this is. Let's jump into this because this was one of the. Okay, it's a large backstory part of this episode, but it's also it's a really nice. It's not really a reinterpretation. It's a visually changing kind of style.
Yeah.
Like, I've seen this now a couple of times through different books and things like that.
I think the Constantine TV show used this as kind of a coda. Almost every episode it had a little flash to this. I know that only lasted 13 episodes, but had a little flash to this backstory, and then obviously the Constantine movie with Keanu Reeves had a reference to this as well.
And it's also, because this is actually the opening of the episode as well, where we see Joanna walking down this corridor, seeing the door and the light behind it, and you're kind of like, what is that? There's that immediate intrigue. And I just loved how it then went on to effectively be in the form of a dream, which is how Morpheus, after the exorcism, manages to find Constantine again, because she's really not that down with helping him out find his stuff, really. And certainly when he commands her, she's like, well, I'm not too fussed with the way you've asked me there, and heads off. So he finds her through her dreams, and it's then when she's in her absolute tip of an apartment that you see sort of that initial scene in the club sort of come to full fruition when the demon takes Astra, the daughter of the guy that you see on the floor who's been kind of incanting satanic verse.
Just for a laugh.
Just for the laugh. And I just loved how that connected in with Morpheus through that dream. But as Morpheus rightly says, it's not just a dream. There is a memory there behind it as well, which was really good. And I think just the whole visuals of all that, and sort of Jenna being left with the half the arm effectively of Astra as well. So it just showing how brutal this collection of Astra by the demon world is, and how it affects Constantine in her dreams, and that persistence of memory through into the dream world. So I just really liked how, it's only a small moment, but I think it really was a nice moment. And of course, Morpheus absolutely cannot find the pouch of sand in her apartment whatsoever. It's a tip, but also then find out it's probably in with an ex-girlfriend that she left without speaking to sort of 6 months ago.
Yes, exactly. And that's where they're off to next, I suppose, on their quest. Yeah. And that's kind of our next big moment from the episode, is Constantine, Morpheus and Matthew going to find the pouch of sand from Rachel, Constantine's former girlfriend.
It's complicated.
It really is.
It's only when she started living with her that Rachel started calling her girlfriend. That was just a bit too much for Constantine. So I really like these scenes because, again, this is a story of Morpheus connecting with humanity, connecting with the people that he's the Lord of Dreams for, I suppose. So I like that they have that conversation outside the door about who Rachel is and how badly Constantine treated her, and how badly this could go, and will go even worse if Morpheus, the Lord of Dreams, walks in with her to the apartment. So Constantine's going in to do this on her own.
Yeah, I really liked how Morpheus is like, I'm coming up with you. And Constantine just says, do you have many ex-girlfriends? And it's kind of like, okay, I'll wait, but don't be long, you know.
Exactly. And it leads to a great scene, I thought, with Constantine and Rachel meeting at the door and kind of rekindling their relationship, because that's the dream that Constantine wanted. That's kind of the dream that she fell into when Joanna walked into that room. She's subject to the sands that are in the apartment. So she falls into a dream, or at least she falls into Rachel's dream, perhaps. It's not 100% clear, but as she comes in, they rekindle, they have a whole conversation, they are about to go to the bedroom, and then Morpheus does arrive exactly as he promised and wipes the dream away, wipes the dust version of Rachel away, and they discover what Rachel's really like. Pretty brutal moment, really, because it's effectively connecting a human going near the sands as a human getting addicted to heroin or something like that, getting addicted to a drug that's completely overtaken their lives.
It almost slightly, I mean, not so much the horror side of it. It just reminded me of Sloth from Seven, that idea of someone, in this case, because of the pouch of sand, not being able to move because they're effectively in this dreamlike state. And so just, you know, the muscles waste, you're not eating, and it ends up, in this case, with the pouch of sand is actually keeping her alive in order for the dream to take and to keep, effectively. So she's been there for, I would say, a long time. You know, I mean, you see that the lights are flashing in the apartment. It's looking dusty. I really liked how they kind of captured that as well.
Yeah. I think Joanna said that she's been gone for about 3 or 4 months at this stage.
6 months, yeah.
6 months, and then had left the pouch behind her when she left. But Joanna does say that she couldn't open the pouch, though. She never even got the drawstrings open, so Rachel must have had a couple of goes at that to try and open it up, and unfortunately paid the price.
I think what's really good here as well is just, as you say, it is that initial conversation at the doorway where you think she's back at Rachel's apartment and Rachel is compos mentis, and they're having that conversation because it is so awkward. And I loved how that played between the two of them, where, you know, you get the sense that Rachel can and will forgive her, but as they turn in, she just says, you know, you have a lot to apologize for, and tells Constantine about having not only phoned around, but to her other exes who say, you know, just
forget
keep
her.
clear.
It's
forget her.
It's something she does.
This is the pattern that Constantine has due to the line of work, ultimately, that she has. So I just loved how that played. And then you see Morpheus come in, as you say. I just loved that whole passage, just that mixture of the dream world with reality, you know, in some ways with the truth in this case of what happened there. So I thought that was just really nicely done. And then to see the actual reality of it, with Rachel lying sort of emaciated in her bed, but kind of not unhappy in a sense because of the pouch of sand, whatever it's feeding her in the dream world. You know, there's a contentment there, not necessarily happiness, but contentment. And it's actually with the taking away of the pouch of sand that you get this agitation from Rachel, which I just thought this was really great sequence of scenes.
But again, as I say, very similar to what heroin can do to somebody. You know, the addiction is there. They believe that that's what's giving them the best life they have, and you take it away from them, they're going to start screaming about it, and that's what's happening here with Rachel. Yeah.
So the other thing I was wondering is, you know, this pouch has been with Joanna Constantine. This happens when you hold it or open it, or was it in something that prevented that? You know, what I mean is that the same fate hadn't happened to Roderick Burgess previously. It hadn't happened with Joanna Constantine either, until she went into that apartment. So it's something that I guess Rachel had done.
Yeah, it's exactly as Joanna says. She couldn't even open the drawstrings on it. She wasn't able to do that, but Rachel was. So it is the open bag of sand that's caused the issue.
Yeah, and as well as if you use the sand. So it's like implied to a degree that if you sprinkle the sand, you fall asleep and your greatest dreams, whatever you dream, comes true. So she stayed asleep. She's used the sand to kind of have the world she wants.
So maybe none of the rest of them had ever actually used it. Maybe they did open the bag, but didn't get.
You don't just like sniff the sand. Like,
exactly.
She's just like a rolled up 20 there that she's kind of using.
But kind of speaking of that moment with Rachel as well, like, what did you think of the reaction from Morpheus when he takes the bag of sand back and is about to walk out on this dying woman, effectively, until Joanna stops him?
So I love this. So this is what this show for me is about, which in the comic books was always about the journey. It's Dream's journey in his, what can start as hatred, because he not hated, maybe is too strong, but there was definitely a dislike for humanity after being incarcerated for 100 years by the Burgess. Like he wasn't a happy, like, endless entity there. He was essentially a captive. So he comes out very jaded and despondent. And over the course of the books, does, in my opinion, kind of learn to love both himself and humanity again through different stories and stuff. And that's what I hope is happening in this show, because it's one of the best parts. So seeing, he still has that hatred. Like, again, it's still fresh, because maybe about 24 hours, a bit more has gone on. Yeah. Like, that's not much since he's got out. So
I think as well, I think for Roderick Burgess and for Alex, definitely there's a hatred there, but it's almost a dismissiveness. It's kind of the way I saw, he took the pouch because it was his and she was of no consequence to him.
Yes.
It wasn't that he hated her. He was dismissive of her needs, of Rachel's needs in the bed, because, well, she had a pouch in her hand. She opened it. This isn't meant for humans, he says. This is mine. I'm taking it back. Yeah. And it's like, right, job done. I now need to get the ruby and the helm. And it's that dismissiveness. It's kind of the ant complex. It's the ant complex of, well, I can just step on you. Yeah. Because you're of no consequence to me. I'm the one that affects you. Yeah. His hatred has been when the humans have affected him, in the sense of with Roderick and with Alex. So I thought, as you say, that whole sequence is really good, because that's where he is. And it's only then with, Constantine saying, sort of, in a sense, pleading, but also just getting really aggro with him about, what's the point of you?
Yeah.
If this is all you do, like, and I that's as well, just that immediate reaction given, her ex-girlfriend is there effectively dying now, and she's wanting to try and cure it in some way, for herself, because she's got that, she's versed in the occult and all these different things that, thinking about what she can do to possibly help Rachel. Yeah. And yet here's this really powerful Lord of Dreams who effectively picks it up and is like, right, on to the next.
Yeah. But exactly as Chris said, this is a motif that we should see. If the show does a good job, we should be seeing this throughout the show. Morpheus is focused on the entirety of the dreaming. That's his focus. He wants to make sure that everybody is able to get the land of dreams back and it's all fixed, but he won't pay attention to individuals. He won't pay attention to people, especially after what happened to him with the Burgess family. So, so it is a little reminder of, look who you're serving almost. You are the Lord of Dreams, but without us, you wouldn't have any dreamers. So, kind of like that as a kickoff point to that storyline.
Yeah, and that twist in perspective that Constantine provides there.
Yeah, we also get one final kind of major story beat across this episode, which is Ethel going back to John Dee.
Yes, we do.
So this is like such a great aside on this. So essentially Ethel talking to John, slowly explaining like who Burgess was, why, what had happened, and why it's important for like that what she has is important to like all aspects of that.
Yeah.
For me, Cripps, like I knew she would not stay around forever, but I loved her being in it because I love that actress. But also, the John Dee character, he goes places.
Yep. Yes, he does.
And I was just like seeing John Dee being who he is.
I like the little nod back to his childhood with a woman who has the powers that she has by having all of the Sandman's tools. You know, by having the ruby. She's able to, on every birthday, ask him what he wishes for, and, you know, a horse will appear in the garden if that's what he wants, or a pony will appear in the garden if that's what he wants. I like that little touch, but there's a little nod to John Dee's history that I presume we'll learn more about as the season goes on, because he seems to have had an incident where lots of people died, which is why he is where he is. So that's quite interesting to have that set up here, and the episode ends with him killing a lot more people as well who were just in his way.
Yeah.
I think what Jolie Richardson and David Thewlis do in these scenes together is just so good, because it's that mother-son tension or you know, that parent and child tension where, you know, she's had to take the ruby back from him because of whatever's happened in the past, you know, and the reason why he's in this institution. But she loves him dearly. She's come here out of that love to protect him, to warn him, because Morpheus is loose, he's back, and he's looking for his ruby. And it's that beautiful kind of parent-child tension. You know, he knows where the ruby is, but she wants to have the ruby in order she can effectively just give it back so that he's safe. But he doesn't agree with that. He wants to keep the ruby. For him, it's this kind of dark obsession with this item. And, you know, he just becomes being really manipulative around then moving it back. Well, who are you, mother? Yeah. You know, listing through all these names. Where am I from? You know, ultimately he knows, but he's trying to sort of embarrass her almost about the life that she's led and how she's kept him safe. And she's always saying, well, it's always been about keeping you safe. And hence then why she gives him the amulet of protection, which effectively costs her life. And I just thought it was really, really good. I mean, in the end, I think, you know, she does ask him, you do believe me? You do understand that what I did was to keep us alive. And, you know, he does say, you know, yes, but he's wanting answers. You need to tell me everything. And there's this sort of tension between them going back through their history to do with the ruby and so on. But ultimately, there's a protectiveness from Ethel Cripps towards a son that a son's not really looking for, because he doesn't care about Morpheus looking for that ruby, because presumably he's wielded it previously, and hence why he's in this institution, as Derek has said. So, I just thought this was really great. This whole kind of scene within his cell, within his room in the institution.
Yeah. The amulet as well is just absolutely fantastic.
Yeah.
Again, seeing the guards pop,
Yes, it was,
I think is the best way of putting it.
I guess. I felt like they were being turned inside out and slowly, and then all of a sudden it just went whoosh. It was kind of like this flood hitting the back of the lift, which, it was really good kind of, I'm brutal. It was, but a great kind of visualization of someone being turned inside out, basically.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
And even when they did it off screen, it was just the sound effect of that popping, as you say, that kind of like slow unraveling, and then the gush as everything has just hit the walls, receptionist, nurses, or whatever has happened. So it was really good. Yeah.
For me, again, just calling out that this might be this universe's Arkham Asylum, but they just can't call it that.
That's right.
So nice. It's like you see the security guards and everything. Although kind of lacks, gonna call it out. Like after John goes up in the elevator and people have popped, there are still people walking in that lobby.
Yes, sir.
And they just don't stop them. When you see someone shuffling out, the assumption is
wearing pajamas as well. Yeah. Right.
He's an inmate. Like, it's not like if someone shuffles out of a hospital like that, you're probably going to check on them.
Yeah, it did look pretty cold out there. Hence why he was given a coat
from the Corinthian, the man who knows where to be, right? He's now met with Ethel, met with John Dee, met with Roderick Burgess. He is involved with everybody here.
He gets around, round.
But I like just, it was only a small scene, but I just loved how the Corinthian just, responds to John's sort of suspicion. Is, why are you doing this to me? And it's like, I only hope that you get to where you're going. And, that's all he wants. Be on your way, and kind of leaves him. There's no kind of like he's trying to capture him or whatever. It's literally, I'm going to keep you warm for this moment because I want you to get back to the ruby before Morpheus. And so I just thought that was just really nicely underplayed moment of bringing the Corinthian back in.
Yeah.
By the end, then you have these two sets with John Dee, but then also seeing Morpheus and Matthew off to hell. That you've now got these two going off on their separate journeys.
Yes, you do. Yes, you do. And Matthew's going to be of use in hell.
Yes.
I don't know whether he believes that or whether he's really concerned about that, but I would be. If my new boss was telling me, I'm going to bring you to hell with me, because he could be of some use.
Well, I guess he can be surreptitious, and, like Morpheus in this episode says, don't spy on me, because he comes up to the window where Rachel is. So I wonder if it's kind of like he's able to scout through. So, but ravens are helpful.
They can be, yes, especially the Baltimore Ravens, which I presume is what you were going for.
Yes, I was.
Yes, okay.
We knew that was where he was going. But that does end this episode. And we've hit all the major points. But is there any notes? Anyone want to bring up anything last minute before we get into what our final thoughts?
There's only one note for me, which is just a kind of a a demon hunter lore thing, which I just liked the touch of, which was when Constantine finds out the name of the demon is Agaleth, she instantly uses that to push him back to hell. That's something you would have seen in other shows and movies that deal with demons, that once you know their name, you can trap them effectively. So it's not called out specifically here, but it looks like that's the quickest way for her to bind the demon and send it back to hell. I like that. That's what happened. And I love that Morpheus is going, no, wait a second. I had to ask him a question. That's why I was here. I really like that. But, yeah.
At least it's not the power of Christ compels you.
Yes.
Like, especially because the demon's in a church.
Absolutely.
Doesn't compel it to do much, really. Excellent. Well then, you know what that means. We need to wrap up Dreaming a Little Dream of Me, because I need to go to bed. So, John, what did you think of the Sandman Chapter 3?
I really loved this episode. I just, everything about it. For me, it's 5 coring ravens out of 5. Nice. I really loved seeing Joanna Constantine in this episode. Loved her from the cool opening in the London club that we get to see later on, sort of just show that little glimpse into that whole background story of Constantine that we also saw on the DC show as well with Matt Ryan. The royal exorcism, fantastic. Poor Kevin, the footballer, he really did look like an average footballer. I just loved all the different touches.
Poor actor is probably a real footballer. You're just calling him average.
No. Constantine said, isn't he an average footballer? Why is she marrying him? So it's just like really, really good.
Maybe he was making a deal with the demon to be a better footballer.
Yeah. Oh, that could have been that makes sense.
It could have been, absolutely. The Ethel and John Dee, just their scenes in his room in the institution are just that whole sort of mother-son sort of tension and at odds with one another, and niggling at that only parent and child can do. I just thought it was really, really good. Great getting Matthew the Raven, fantastic. Got a bit of back chat. We didn't really hear much from the other Raven.
No, we didn't.
Jessame, I guess she was really just watching, and learning until she got shot. And then also just the whole thing around Morpheus getting his pouch back, this first step, in being schooled by Constantine about humanity, and that even as Lord of Dream, he should have some. Yes. And I, the fact that he does give her a peaceful rest. He can't cure her. He doesn't do that, but it's just, he allows her to die peacefully in her sleep. Yeah. So I thought that was really just lovely touches all the way through this. And I can't wait to go to hell. And also, not me personally, obviously. And also, I, can't wait to see, where John Dee is heading to as well.
Some interesting stories to come.
Where has he stuffed that ruby?
Derek, what did you think? Or do I need to ask?
I absolutely loved this episode. Not throwing any shade at the previous 2 episodes, but this is the first truly great episode of this series. The first one's a great opener. The second one establishing things. This one giving the real concept behind Sandman, as we mentioned, the idea that he's learning to re-find and reconnect with the people that he's supposed to be providing the dreams to, I suppose. The performances in this one are fantastic. Absolutely loved Jenna Coleman in here, as we've already said. I really love the concept of this story, just this kind of side trip to go and meet Joanna Constantine, where he's going to collect his bag of sand, or pouch of sand. Bag of sand doesn't sound as cool as pouch of sand, does it?
And his bucket and spade.
But yeah, I really love this. Love what it's setting up for the rest of the series as well, with Ethel and John Dee, and really intrigued to see them go to hell. Another one of the very famous parts of the first couple of volumes of Sandman. Chris, what about yourself? What do you think of the episode?
Absolutely loved it. I can't add more to what you guys have said. Constantine is a fan favorite character, and the portrayal here is absolutely fantastic. Matthew, I love the actor, and this is a great rendition, if you want to call it that, a version. And it's just, again, it's the story unfolding further and further, and it's all that beats that I want to see. So I can't add more to what you guys said, and just say I want to roll on to each episode quicker and quicker.
I just don't want this series to run out. That's the only reason I don't want to roll on to every episode and just watch them all. I don't want it to run out because we're going to be waiting a year and a half, 2 years.
Well, that's true.
For another season,
Yeah.
unless they've been quietly filming somewhere, which I don't think they have, unfortunately.
Time will tell.
Yes, it will. Yes, it will.
We want to hear your thoughts, so please send them in to feedback@tvpodcastindustries.com, or join us over on our Facebook group at facebook.com/groups/TV Podcast Industries. And we have a spoiler post for each and every episode where you can put in your thoughts and we will read them out in our own dulcet tones. But if you want to hear your dulcet tones, you can head on to tvpodcastindustries.com and you can record a voicemail, or you can just send us your voicemail to feedback@tvpodcastindustries.com. I've said tvpodcastindustries.com quite a lot. So let's get into your thoughts and your feedback. First up, we have an email from Robert Williams, who had some feedback on our episode 2 podcast. Hey guys, we're enjoying your discussion on the show. Like Wheel of Time, I would be having trouble keeping up with some of the plot lines without you guys talking about the background of the story. I did not read the comics, so forgive my ignorance, but I noticed that there is a lot of Cain and Abel time given here. What was their importance in the written story? Were they simply comic relief and devices used to explain some lore elements? I mean, the characters are well played, but it seems kind of odd to me. Thanks so much again, Robert. I must also amend my last emails. You did discuss a bunch about Cain and Abel, but do they exist in the same realm as Dream? Do they have powers themselves? Do they end up playing critical parts in the comics? Hopefully that makes more sense. Thanks! No problem, Robert. Well, to answer your question, it's not about Wheel of Time, so I can't really be the expert here. Derek!
You don't have to throw it over to me. You've read the comics as well, Chris. You know this.
There's a difference. It's like I know X-Men 90s and early 2000s X-Men lore inside out and backwards.
Right.
I know Spider-Man lore inside out. I know Wheel of Time lore inside out and backwards. You know Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., Nick Fury, and the Sandman lore backwards.
Yeah, but there are still going to be people that know it better than me. So if I get anything wrong, please continue sending your feedback to us. Cain and Abel are really important in the comic books because they are two of the main residents that are left within the realm of the Dream and that are in the same realm as Morpheus. I think there was a little bit of confusion when we talked about that in the first episode because maybe it wasn't clear, but Morpheus was looking for something that he created in his realm, so that he could take the power back out of it. The only two people that he knew that had something, which was Gregory the Gargoyle, the only two people that he knew were Cain and Abel. Do they have an importance in the written story? Yes, they do. Probably because they are very central characters to the dreaming throughout the entire series. You see them from really early issues all the way up to the end. So they will be around a lot. But I'm not going to spoil anything that they do.
No,
or anything
we can't. I was
that
going to say,
happens,
yes, they do, but don't say more.
Yeah, but they do have a major importance, I suppose, as does all the characters that surround Morpheus.
Yeah. Do they have powers? Yeah, they, Abel comes back from the dead.
Well, yeah.
Every time he's killed.
Yeah.
Cain consistently kills him. Nearly every day, I think. And depending on how much he's annoyed, buries him in the depth of a grave to be considered and determined at that time.
But he doesn't usually kill him before lunch. That's all we know.
No, exactly. Yeah. On a good day.
Yeah.
Like, that's fair.
Excellent. Thank you, Robert, for listening to the podcast and asking those questions around Cain and Abel as well. Because, I had similar thoughts. You know, I didn't realize we were still in the dream realm at that moment, which I think you did kind of mention that later on. So, yeah.
But they are the owners of the House of Secrets and the House of Mysteries.
Yes.
Two houses that they own. So
Ooh.
that may come back later.
It sounds like it will for sure. Thanks so much, Robert. Great to get your thoughts in. We also got an email in from Coffee and Vodka about episode 3. Greetings, fellow exercise defenders. Joanna Constantine is a replacement for John Constantine, who they couldn't get for legal reasons. As great as it would have been to see Tom's Dream and Matt Ryan's Constantine sharing the screen, Jenna Coleman does a fine job in her portrayal of Joanna. The extended dialogue between John Dee and his mother, as well as the handoff of the talisman rather than the gem, while diversions from the actual story worked. As did the appreciated, almost beat-for-beat scenes between Morpheus and Constantine. It's clear, just as in any project like this, you want to create something palatable to both fans and casual viewers alike, and this episode rode that line cleanly. Gothic horror a la the OC, as contributed by the third member of the team, Alan Heinberg. Coffin Vodka continues, I suppose even using the Corinthian rather than a woman innocently picking up what she thought a normal hitchhiker as a shortcut might be considered efficient. Did think, however, we might get one episode without him as the arch nemesis thread running through it. Why do you think the producers thought this series required an arch nemesis, by the way? To placate the aforementioned casual viewer, perhaps? There was a certain poetry to Dream being his own worst enemy in the graphic novel, one which I think could have carried over just fine to the show. What do you think? Unnecessary trope, or do I protest too much? In the end, a tight enough story that hit all the salient point. 4 dream-dusted lovers out of 5. Coffee and Vodka. Thank you so much, Coffee and Vodka. And it is ticking up even further now. Yes. We are on to 4 out of 5. So that is really good. I think with our comments on your episode 2, this arch nemesis, I think, is also about the series. And I think just to allow that bigger tie-in later on where maybe he would have popped up in the comics. So, I mean, as I say, I'm not read them, but that would be my guess around that. So I think it's just sprinkling it through like, hundreds and thousands over a cupcake, really. And I think
you don't want the casual viewers to forget about the Corinthian. He obviously is going to play a major role in the season, but having introduced him in episode 1, had a little moment with him in episode 2, and an even smaller moment really in episode 3 here, it's just keeping him present in mind, so when you see him later, you know who he is straight off the bat. So
beyond that, though, it's also he has greater machinations. He is a larger character who is pulling strings to a degree. So you also do want to see that he is fighting against what he believes the Lord of Dreams is doing. So how he can stop the Lord of Dreams coming back to power. So he is doing these. He's doing the spy networky thing in the background. So he's always there. He's a nightmare. He's always around. Yeah. And look, whether you protest too much or unnecessary trope, time tells. I think we can look back at the end of season 1. At the end of season 1, we can go, you're like, maybe it wasn't necessary bit having him too much, or maybe like it's the right amount of flavor, because by the time we get to wherever it is at the end of season 1, like we'll know, it was the perfect amount because it just kind of fed us the details. It spoon fed us little bits each time. So wait and see.
And it's also, I guess, Netflix drops it, you watch it all. I think watching it episode by episode, and probably for yourself, Coffee and Vodka, having read the comics, you know what's already lying ahead. So, or what's been dropped for efficiency. But having sort of watched a couple ahead, then some of those efficiency gains that you talk about, and which you know about at this stage, will also, be realized in hopefully a way that you really enjoy.
Absolutely, yeah. Great to hear your thoughts again, Coffee and Vodka, on that. We also have an email in from Christina Jones, who says, "Hey guys, just wanted to drop a line and say I'm enjoying the series thus far and look forward to your breakdowns, as I've only just finished the first half of book 1 of the audiobook. I wish I had ingested this via comic panels instead, but alas, welcome to time management reading." Sturgis is the embodiment of James McAvoy's characterization in the audiobook, which draws me in perfectly to the familiar arcs unfolding. Can you tell me, will they cover audiobook 1, or are they taking all elements from the comics into this show? Can't wait to see Death. I love Kirby, and I think she will bring that spark to the role. The casting is ideal. Keep up the great work. Cheers. From Christina at Black Girl Couch Reviews. Thanks, Christina. Good to hear from you.
Yep, thank you so much, Christina.
On the audiobook, in Act 1, they did the first 3 volumes of the Sandman, and they have released Act 2 now, so there's another 3 volumes in that. On the show, on the Netflix show, it is just the first 2 volumes of the book, Preludes and Nocturnes and The Dollhouse.
Okay, excellent stuff.
But I assume they'll sprinkle something in, some little threads to tease what may come in the future. Because Neil Gaiman wrote these on an ongoing basis. Mm-hmm. They all have ideas of where they want to go, and they write out story beats. But here he is able to, the creator of the Sandman can tweak little bits in his retelling and go, I'm going to sprinkle in a cool thing here now in season 1, and potentially in season 3 or 2 when we get to volume 4 or 6 or whatever. That's going to make, oh my God, mind-blowing a moment. I think, personally, that's how I would do it.
Right.
Well, that's it. And it's also that Neil Gaiman has had 27 years to think on his, as you say, his comics that he was doing, yes, he planned them out and so on, but in terms of adapting them, he's reimagining them and how you can tell that story. So it must be a really interesting process for him. And I think as well, it's just really interesting, like with Christina, just people, different ways of coming to the show. So I've not listened to the audiobook even, let alone read the comics. So I'm just coming purely from the TV and
me whining about you that you should read this for 15 years.
Well, that as well. And maybe that's why I kicked against it.
You told me
Shocking.
I'm not allowed to nag you.
Shocking.
Thanks so much, Christina.
Yeah. Thanks, Christina.
Thanks so much, Christina. Over on the Bookie of Faces, we do have some feedback from Victor Von Doom, who had this to say. Over on the Bookie of Faces, we do have feedback. First up, some feedback from Victor Von Doom, who said, "Greetings, dreamers, another smash episode. It seems Morpheus indeed has a heart. Can't say that for the Corinthian. I enjoy my homeboy Patton Oswalt as Matthew. David Thewis as John Dee is very scary now. Will Corinthian conscript him to the cause? Already dreading the Lucifer Morpheus meeting. Nighty night, dreamers." Thanks so much, Victor Von Doom. Yeah, homeboy Patton Oswalt, he's good.
He's very good.
Yeah.
He's very good as Matthew, definitely. I'm so looking forward to Lucifer and Morpheus meeting.
Yeah, that would be really interesting. And I wonder if, I don't know what happens later, but certainly at this moment, it seems Corinthian is just using him in a sense, rather than as such kind of on as a partner, maybe. But I'd not say that doesn't happen, but at the moment, I like the way he's just kind of going, be on your merry way to find your ruby.
It feels like he's keeping an eye on the things that could help him, and anything that keeps stuff away from Morpheus might keep Corinthian on this plane, I suppose.
Yeah.
Good stuff. Thanks so much, Victor.
Yeah, thank you so much, Victor Von Doom. Next up, Parthenia Dupree Locklear. I know nothing about Sandman or what to expect of it, but when she showed up, I yelled, Clara. I do know a bit about Constantine, so this was a pleasant surprise to me. Excellent stuff, Parthenia. Yes, Clara from Doctor Who, indeed. And yes, I know a bit about Constantine as well, other than how to pronounce the name, of course, given the outtakes from this podcast, I guess.
I feel like we would have about 40 minutes of outtakes of all of us pronouncing Constantine.
I just want to roll with it, but we do have a producer here that is stamping his authority on this
guaranteeing one. A few have slipped through because you didn't re-record them when I asked you to, John.
That's true. Thank you, Parthenia. Dr. Bob Phillips, also over on Facebook, says, swept away again by this one. Genre switching as the stories demand to be told. We had 1.5 episodes of epic fantasy with a sprinkling of spy thriller. Now we have a film noir with gory horror flick. They haven't held back on getting top quality actors turning in top draw performances. Sultry emo lord with a heart is balanced beautifully by Modoc Matthew and kept in place by a surprisingly untidy Clara Constant. No, it's Joanna Constantine, Constantine, Constant who, I don't know anymore. Dr. Bob finishes with, how on earth can she look that good in a flat with that degree of disorganization? And farewell, Ethel, you lived life to the fullest. Yeah, thanks so much, Dr. Bob. I know what you mean about the disorganization. I felt that as well. It's kind of like, where does she find everything? You know, it would have been handy if they'd gone to Rachel's and then realised that the pouch of sand was actually back in her apartment. And she just had to deal with a really angry Rachel that was really annoyed and ticked off about having been dropped with no warning or no message.
I like it. That would be an alternate take of the show. Good stuff. Thanks, Dr. Bob, for your feedback. Also on Facebook, Ben Rush says, this was the episode I was most interested in seeing, as I'm a massive Constantine fan and also a Jenna fan too. And it was excellent. Jenna had the Constantine job down easy, and the scriptwriters using elements from Jamie Delano and Garth Ennis stories to help fill out the episodes was chef's kiss. And having Claire Higgins as Matt Hetty, a bonus cuddle. 11 out of 10. So happy. And at last, the name is pronounced correctly. I'm guessing Matthew the Raven is still Matt Cable from Moore's Swamp Thing run. Anyway, absolutely loved the episode.
Thank you so much, Ben Rush. On Matthew, I don't know if they'll go into it.
I don't think they will. No, I don't think they'll make that deep connection to other DC comics. I think that the show is going to try and keep it within the Sandman lore, which is fine for the most part because almost everything from these 2 volumes onwards takes place in the universe of the Sandman. Doesn't really go in and out of the DC universe. It's just that first volume that has characters come in from other DC comics. Okay. But he just references it here. He references, I was on Earth quite recently and now I'm here.
Yeah. They might give his name as a nod and a wink and a nudge.
Yeah, possibly. Maybe.
I saw a monster when I was dying. Yeah. What was that about?
Yeah, And I mean, Swamp Thing kind of could feed into the horror gore kind of stuff a bit, I think. In this.
But we definitely won't see Swamp Thing in the show.
No, you won't. No, you definitely won't, for sure.
No one will see Swamp Thing.
But the lore of it, the mythology of something swampy, could really, you could see it fit here for sure. Yeah.
They could just also say, because of this heat wave going on, anything swampy is in my pants because it is so warm.
Oh dear. Well, that's horror. But Ben Rush, thank you so much. And, we might turn your happiness into sadness. Because if you ever heard the unedited version of this podcast, you know how differently Constantine is pronounced by myself alone. Well, alone, everyone else.
But really good to hear from you, Ben. I'm glad you're enjoying the show.
Yes, thank you so much, Ben. But that brings us to an end of our feedback, and that brings us to an end of our episode. Thank you so much for joining us. We hope you say subscribe to the podcast. And if you enjoy what you hear, why not share it with your friends? Because sharing the podcast is what, John?
It is, of course, fellow dreamers, sharing the love.
Oh, yes. If you love what you hear, why not head on over to patreon.com/TV Podcast Industries, where for an ongoing monthly amount, you can support us and help keep the lights on, the engines running, the hamsters spinning in the wheel. And right now during the heat rush, just like literally me in like ice cold drinks because, oh my God, it is warm.
Absolutely. And I remember when we're recording, we can't put on fans or anything. So it's just hot.
Yeah. But if you want to help get us an ice cold one-off coffee, you can go to buymeacoffee.com/TVPI, where you can literally buy us an iced coffee. We'd be very much appreciative. If you can't buy us a coffee or support us on an ongoing amount, don't worry, you can still like, share, rate, review on all the podcast dreaming or nightmare catchers, because sharing the podcast, rating us, leaving a review is so important for discoverability and helps little podcasts like ourselves. And it is greatly, greatly, greatly appreciated.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for listening. Thanks so much for your support and for all the feedback you've been giving. We'll be back next time with the Sandman Chapter 4, I hope in hell. Ooh, we are going to hell.
We're all going to hell.
Gwendolyn Christie as Lucifer. Can't wait to see that.
Excellent stuff.
Well, thank you so much, and we'll speak to you again soon.
Yes, thank you so much, fellow dreamers. Remember, keep watching, keep listening, and keep dreaming. Nighty-night.
Bye.
Bye.